Hi everybody. I read a lot on social media, on Facebook and on forums and things, of people asking questions about soldering, and they're showing pictures of their soldering, saying what they're doing wrong and why, why am I getting cold joints? And I thought I'd just do a very brief, briefer than the last one I did, hopefully. A brief overview of the 3 things I think are really important and don't tend to get mentioned in a lot of how-tos on YouTube and wherever you look for your advice. Those 3 things are, okay, more or less in order of importance. 1, your iron. You cannot get away with a cheap iron. There's some good quality irons that aren't super expensive. It will hold your soldering back. We'll go into that a little bit more in a second. Secondly, this doesn't get mentioned much either, your vision. This is close-up work, okay? You need to be on it. You need to be able to see. You need to be able to magnify what you're doing in a practical way as well. And thirdly, your setup. What's actually on your bench, how you're holding stuff together, how you're working. Okay, so let's wind back. Okay, soldering irons. The core principle, the most important thing about soldering is the heat transfer from your iron to the solder and the component. Okay, and that should be quick, almost instantaneous. It's easy for you to say. If you're putting your iron on the joint and you're having to wait for it to warm up, chances are your tip, there's a coating on the tip, and that coating is tarnished or gone bad, and it's not transferring the heat across. Okay, and if it's not doing that, you're just you're waiting, and it's not going to flow your solder. Okay, so you need something that has a good quality, robust, properly coated tip, and not all soldering irons have that. Okay, if you've got a soldering iron, this is an old one, okay, from way back in the day, years ago. If your soldering iron has a slug tip like this, okay, I don't know whether that's going to focus, but anyway, you can probably be able to see that. If it has one of those, there's a really strong chance it's going to be shit. No two ways about it. That's the cheap. And what you have is these don't warm up very quickly. Okay, and then they do. The reason they have a slug is because they do that to try and keep the temperature, because there's not a very powerful transformer inside a handheld one. Okay, but it doesn't really work that well. So when you suck some heat out of it, the heat disappears and it takes a long time to come back up to temperature. Plus, the coatings aren't going to be great on that. So you start soldering with one of those, and a couple of weeks later, it's screwed, and you're back to square one. Okay, I'm not affiliated, but I would recommend you spend some dough on getting a Weller soldering iron. They're not an industry standard for no reason. I think they do some that start around about 30 quid. I don't quite know where their what their tip range starts at, but this, it's all tangled up. The tips in most Weller irons have an element that goes right up to the end of the tip inside here, and that's different to the other ones. And these, just a joy to use. I don't know whether that's on their entry-level models, but I know full well that on their entry-level models, the coatings on the tips are better. So I would go for Weller. There are other irons on the market. Have a look on YouTube. I use Weller all the time. If you want to spend some money, people say, well, why get a big station? Why get one of these big units? If you're soldering a lot, they warm up really quickly. They've got a massive transformer in them. They heat up quick. They stay hot quick. Okay, that's mostly the reason people spend a lot of money on a soldering iron, is because it keeps its temperature. And if you're just doing builds every couple of weeks, or every couple of months, and it's not really that critical that it's going to warm up quickly. If you're building 10-15 pedals a day, you can lose hours waiting for this thing to warm back up again. So that's that. Right, okay, so spend your money on an iron. It is very, very much worth it. Secondly, vision. This seems to get overlooked in most videos, actually, and I think it's I'm getting old. My eyes are shocking anyway, but even when I was younger, my eyes were working properly. I never ever worked with one-to-one vision. I always magnified. I've tried all sorts. I've tried these big light things, and you kind of, they're really awkward and you can't really see anything. I've settled on, the last few years, these jeweler's magnifiers. You look like a geek, but these things work an absolute treat, and they're really, really handy to use. You can get them on eBay for about 15 quid, and again, they transform your soldering. You can see what you can do, and you see how the solder is reacting, and you can see the joint really, really clearly. Even if you have good vision, magnifying what you're doing makes the world of difference. But get your eyes tested. It can't hurt. It's a tenner or whatever. I don't know. Anyway. So yeah, magnify. Finally, your setup. And when I mean by setup, what when you've got your board, you've got your components, how are you going to hold them in place? What are you going to do? How are you going to actually keep things from moving around? Because I see people soldering, and they've just literally they're chasing the components around the desk. Most of you know this, but if you don't, blue tack, or in the States I think they call it white tack. Blue tack, that is the stuff. Hold everything down together. It doesn't like heat. It does stick to some of your components if it gets hot, but it's good stuff. And that, just keep things stuck down, because then again you can make proper contact. Some people like to use these clampy arms, but I've found that when you're soldering on those, you have to have your hands in midair, and they're going to wobble around. Whereas if you've got something on the bench, you're steady. I sometimes use one of these if it's something that's really heavy populated. I don't do much PCBs, so but when I'm doing PCBs, generally for resistors, if it's got a lot of resistors in it, I might stick it on here, and then you can just bang through it. Makes life a little bit easier. And if you want to hold components in place, in particular places, or wires in place, or anything like that, get a bunch of Crocodile Clips. You can buy them in packs of 10 and 15, again off eBay, and just use them in your enclosure or wherever you want. Clamp it in place, bosh, away you go. And they're great as a heatsink as well. So if you've got some tricky transistors, the germaniums are really, really sensitive to too much heat from your iron. Stick one of those on the legs, and that will wick quite a lot of heat away from it. Just a quick and dirty one today. So I think I've covered everything I was going to say. So thank you for watching. Thank you everybody for your support of Reeves with Electro. It's quite a journey. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take it easy, guys. Thank you.